I'd just like to introduce the moderator for the salon tonight, Dr. Darren Ranko, who is chair of Native American programs and a citizen of the Penobscot Nation and a strong collaborator and generous supporter of the library. And I hope you have a great night and you return. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy. That's that. If you haven't seen that installation, please go see. It's really quite phenomenal. I'm not going to spend a lot of time saying much before we see the film. I will moderate the discussion afterwards. But I did want to introduce Donna to just give a brief overview and introduce the film. And then we'll watch it and then we'll have a discussion about it afterwards. Sound good for everyone? I was always told that when I went to Harvard that my checking in like that revealed my working class roots. So anyway, here's Donna Loring, who's a Penobscot elder and author of this piece.
You sure you want to let that loose? All right, let me get up here so I can turn around. Need a lot of room. Okay, so can you hear me? I can't hear myself. Yeah, so this film was basically a play. I originally wrote a short play with Mary and Molly, and the story starts in the 50s, and it's about a biracial Penobscot African-American student who actually gets a letter from a mother about her past. And she realizes she's told that her grandmother or great-grandmother was Molly Molasses. And she goes to the library to find more about her Penobscot heritage because she was brought up as African-American. And that's going to be all laid out in the film. And you'll see why that happened. And you'll also get to meet Molly Molasses from the 1800s or so. And she was a Matulin, and she didn't take any crap from anybody. And the Bangor business people, the men, would fear her. They would, as you said in your book, Bunny, and that's in the film as well. So there's some things in the film that you should see, and there's lots of issues that come out that from a black and brown perspective. And so watch close and listen, and the Bangor Library's in it, and the Terratine Club is mentioned, and a bunch of other stuff. So enjoy the film.
All right. That was extraordinary. It's just the second time I've seen it. So again, just a reminder, I'm Darren Ranko. I'm chair of Native American programs here at the University of Maine. I'm a Penobscot Nation citizen. And for the panel, we're joined with some pretty amazing people. So starting from my left, we have Bunny McBride, who is an author, an intellectual. She's a fighter for Indigenous people's rights and all sorts of other things. She, as you saw in the film, she's authored, one of her books is Women of the Dawn, and that became a central piece, obviously, for the film. To her left is of course, Donna Loring. Donna has accomplished so many things. She's one of the things is that she is an honorary recipient of an honorary doctorate here from the University of Maine. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. That was a good day. And then, of course, she's the author of this piece and a number of other things, including the book In the Shadow of the Eagle, which has also recently become the inspiration for an exhibit that we worked on together at the Abbey Museum. she hosts a radio program on WERU that I'm a frequent guest on, along with Bunny's better half there, and that recently won an award for a radio show for engaging in the civil rights space. To her left is Margot Lukens, who is a professor emerita here of English here at the University of Maine, and she's the author of Still They Remember Me, along with a couple of other folks, which is an exploration in Penobscot language of traditional stories, and she's been working in the space of especially Wabanaki story work for the last 30 years or so. I don't know. I don't want to date us too significantly, but she's been a great colleague to work with in a lot of these spaces, and you saw her name associated with this production as well. And then lastly, of course, is David Camlin, who's a Maine-based filmmaker, who's focused on stories of history and human connection, and I think has been a really great colleague in this project, and others for again, Donna, the whole host of folks that have been connected to our communities. So I wanted just to start us off. I wanted to ask, especially Donna and David, just to talk a little bit about the creation of this work and sort of how it went from. I was familiar with it when you had written the story, Donna, and then how did it come into being as this production?
Well, I first wrote it as a play, and I had written another play prior to that, and tried to get that one produced, and I was just so disappointed in trying to get these things produced and not being able to. I got contacted by a friend of mine, Ann Henshaw from Oak Foundation, who asked if I had any kind of work that Speedwell could sponsor, because Speedwell is a nonprofit and they look for women artists. And so I said, well, I have a short play, Mary and Molly, and you guys can have it. Just take it. I don't want anything more to do with it. I'm tired of this stuff. Just take it. So they did, and I got an email saying that, would you be interested in having this become an animated film? And I thought, that's different. Yeah, sure. I'd like to do that. And I said, yeah, and count me in on this. So that's how that happened. And this is the first animated film that I've ever worked on. And I'm not sure, but I think David hasn't worked on any. This is the first one for David and all of us, actually. The illustrators, Shannon and Ann, that was their first time in illustrating for a show. So this is our first time in doing this, and it's a story that I wanted to tell, because there are other issues in the film, and I'm not going to go on and on. So just, if you have more questions, and
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think I might be responsible for suggesting this should be an animated film. So yeah, basically, once Speedwell Contemporary got their hands on it, they found their way to me. And so my role in the film as co-director with Donna, I think, was really to sort of help adapt the stage play into a screenplay and into this animated version of it. So we really spent probably 2 years at least really working with the illustrators to, at Donna's direction, to make sure that what we were coming up with for imagery was true to her vision for the story, but also was accurate in depicting some of the characters who were inspired by real life individuals. So yeah, over those 2 years, we basically went through all the process of art development, brought Margot on to help with the dialogue direction and casting, and just kind of picked our way through it. And this was during the sort of second half of COVID, so 2020, January of 21 through 22, and ultimately had our premiere in 2023, December of 2023. So here we are a few years later, still having screenings, still sharing the film with different groups of people, which I think is fantastic. As a filmmaker, my background is mostly in documentary, so this for me was a great challenge to work in a narrative film and also use some of my animation or motion graphic skills to sort of try to make it come to life. So for me, it was a great experience as a filmmaker, a great challenge. I learned a lot, spending a lot of time with Donna on various Zoom calls, going over the story. And yeah, I think I'm very proud of the piece, and I'm super happy to see, like I said, something be made that has a life beyond just a premiere. So we've had a couple of screenings in different communities. We're going to be on Maine Public Television this weekend, which is very exciting. And yeah, I think I'm just excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, and I just want to shout out the makers, the creatives behind the scenes. Shannon and Anne, you already mentioned, they're both cousins to each other and my cousins. So I'm very proud of them. They're amazing Penobscot artists in their own right. And then you have Molly Molasses, who is responsible for the music, which is really phenomenal. And people are probably following her career. She's become increasingly more in demand as a storyteller and as a musician. So again, just amazing Native folks being able to add into this space, which I think, to me, that's part of the feel of the film, is just that creative process. And I just, David, like, and Donna, like, that to me, it's like part of like how this is more than the sum of its parts. It feels like significant in that way. It reflects kind of a vision that is, invested in Native storytelling in really significant ways. And so I think that's an amazing accomplishment. I want to move it to Bunny first, and then Margot, just to talk a little bit about, obviously I reference one of your books, and sort of where these stories come from, but maybe you could give us a little bit of that kind of context for the storytelling of these amazing Native women that you've written about, but also sort of just unearthing, stories that are basically held, silent or hidden from our collective memories or history. So yeah, Bunny.
Thank you. I think what's really fascinating about this film is that it begins to make a list, and it truly is a partial list, of the remarkable Penobscot and Wabanaki peoples throughout history. And so this young woman who didn't know about her past, Molly Molasses, as the character in this film, begins to name some of them. And there are really, per capita, I think, more creative people in the Penobscot and Wabanaki community than in the general population. It's really quite extraordinary. And Donna is really carrying on a kind of performative tradition that people in her historic community and in her own family started generations ago, just being the great, 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 great granddaughter, I think it is, of Frank Big Thunder Loring, who was known in the 1800s and the early 1900s for his storytelling, for his performatives. You think of somebody like Lucy Nicola Pula, known as Watawasso, and she not only went across the country singing Native American songs, but she was also an opera singer. But she also staged remarkable things, such as the annual pageant on Indian Island. But in addition to that, she did an extraordinary performative that she directed of the 1724 massacre at Sandy River at the mission village of Father Relais. And it was a piece of political theater that was put out as, we're doing this for the community. But she was really calling out the mainstream community and saying this happened in the past and things are still happening that need to be dealt with. And for those in the film, you don't actually see the full, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, but the full portrait of Molly Molasses' daughter, Sarah Molasses. So this shows it to you. And Donna has a huge replica of this painting, a life-size replica in her study. So every time she walks in there, this is what you see, right? I'll hand it over.
And also part of the exhibit downstairs. So thanks to Daisy referencing that. So yeah, Margot, if you could say more about, again, part of the sort of story context or historical context that in terms of your contributions here, but in general, just sort of a response to how that's woven together here.
Well, so my role began when Donna said, you got to get some actors. And so beat the bushes a little bit. For about a decade or more at that point, I had been working with people from Penobscot Nation and other Wabanaki communities on community theater projects. And William Yellowrobe, who is the dedicatee of the film, had been a real asset on campus. When he came, really what he wanted to do was to help people get plays by Indigenous playwrights out to audiences, whether in a plain old sit-down reading or a staged reading or a workshop. And it was in the context of a course that he gave that Donna actually wrote this play. And so I had a few contacts there and was able to, figure it out with other people I knew through theater work. It turned out that the man who plays Charles, the father of young Mary, is also the person who knows how to work all of the recording equipment at the Performing Arts School, the School of Performing Arts here. And for a long time, I've talked to people in the school who say, oh, no one knows how to use that. And they point up to the room at the top of Minsky. No one knows how to use that anymore. But in fact, we found out that Bertie Sawyer does know, and he ended up really being our sound engineer as well as Charles's voice. The connection also with Shannon Sokolexis came through the earlier project that Darren mentioned, Still They Remember Me, that Carol Dana was really the lead person on. She's a Penobscot language carrier who realized that traditional stories needed to be republished in a format that would be attractive to young people growing up in a Penobscot context, but in an Anglophone household and world, so that these stories are presented in a bilingual printed format so that people can find their way from English, if they're familiar with English, back into the words of the language that's their patrimony. And Shannon Sokolexis was the illustrator who we had worked with all on that book, and so that was one of the reasons she became an artist in this project. Was there more historical context you wanted there?
I don't think. I think that's a good start. We can continue the discussion, Margot.
I want to say something about Molly, but Molly Obomsawin, but you can go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, so I was just in New York City. Molly Obomsawin,
yes,
of course, a film called Sugarcane went all the way to the Oscars, and it was her soundtrack that was behind Sugarcane. She and Lakota Sanborn, another Penobscot person, she's Abenaki and he's Penobscot, participated in a very recent, and it's up now until December 31st, an unsanctioned virtual takeover of the American wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And there's a platform called Amplifier Art that you can go to and find. It's a portal, and you can go to it and start at the Fifth Avenue entrance to the Met Museum, and it takes you up the steps through the museum down into the American wing, into the gallery full of, big landscapes up by Bierstadt and the picture of Washington crossing the Delaware. And you aim your camera, your phone camera at these pictures, and things begin to happen that have been put there by Indigenous artists. There's a group of about 17 people who've worked on this. And the Obamsawin and Sanborn contribution is really
Yeah, it is.
awesome.
It's pretty
I'm not
amazing.
going to tell you what it is in
Yeah,
case
it's
you go.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like that, one of the things that so many of us are in debt to Donna for is that the passing on of those stories and highlighting experience. And one thing that I'm always drawn in by Donna, and maybe you can reflect more on that, is like how in many of your creative works, right, as a playwright and storyteller, you're exploring these issues of people who are Indigenous but being left out or don't know their own story or are struggling to find our collective story together. And I guess, my question to you is sort of how purposeful that is, and sort of what does that mean for you in terms of building that connective tissue sort of from ancestors down to the future generations? Like, it seems like it's a key motivating of your work. She and I talk all the time, and I've never asked her this question, but it has been on my mind for quite a while, because, we have a great Penobscot author here who's faculty here at the University of Maine, Morgan Talty, and he also explores similar issues of like people left out or left behind or not knowing the story. And if you could say something about, a little bit about your motivations and thinking about those connections.
Well, I'm not used to getting questions from you. I'm
Right.
usually
On the radio
asking-
show, she asked me a lot of questions.
usually the one asking the questions. Yeah, so I look at, Penobscot Wabanaki as sort of like a blank slate where, I'll put it another way. Every day is full of stories. You can turn the TV on, and stories. I don't care what channel you go to, it's a story. The news, stories. So any way you turn the stories, and it's been a while, a long time since I've noticed Wabanaki stories. They're just starting to come out now. We're just starting to tell our stories, and what I want to do and what I hope I've done is to help people who want to tell their stories to sort of like give them a pathway to say, oh, yeah, I can tell my story too. And we have many stories, and stories are important. And I say stories are us, and they are us. And stories are even more important these days when people are trying to erase our stories and erase us. So that's why.
Oh,
Donna, may I use your this relates what you're saying right there makes me think of the many times you've talked about the importance of education, and basically the idea that if we understood each other, we would damage each other less. And so whether through writing or plays or the various medias that you've used, can you talk about your sense of education and how that helps us across cultures to see one another and respect one another?
Well, let me just start, and I'll bring it together, I promise. When I was in Vietnam, I served Vietnam for like a year, and I was the communications specialist and handled the casualty reports in Southeast Asia. And my term there made me realize that in order for us to be killing these people, and vice versa. They have to dehumanize. We have to dehumanize. And when I got back home, I sort of carried that with me into the legislature and, observed all of these laws and policies being created and how they affected the tribes, mostly in a negative manner. And I thought, well, if we could only tell our stories, if they only knew who we are, if we were to become visible to the public. And one of the things that happened when I was in the legislature was I got the State of the Tribes address going. So for the first time ever, I think this was in 2002, the tribal chiefs were allowed to speak to the joint session of the legislature. And they became visible. They were on TV that day. They were in the newspapers the next day. So I felt that part of what I wanted to happen, I got done, but I'm still trying to do that to keep our stories and our humanity right out there so that we don't get disappeared.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things about how Donna has constructed a number of these projects that she's worked on. Like as many of us are so lucky to be able to work with her, is that she brings others along, other especially other Wabanaki people, brings us along into the spaces, and that's like something I really try to model in terms of supporting young artists or any of these folks. It's really it's so core to like how we connect and relate, as Penobscot and Wabanaki people. So I mean, I think that really comes through in this work more than some of the other things as well. Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to ask anyone, but I'll maybe start with David again. Like, in bringing together this narrative, because it functions on so many levels for me. Like, there's those little pieces Bunny mentioned. There's like a timeline of missed history, right? On the one hand, and then there's the compelling story, just the compelling story of like, how does any young person belong or fit in? I don't know. In telling that story, how did you kind of bring all those elements together? Because it's like in a very short period of time, you get like a deep history lesson on sort of Wabanaki, more recent history Wabanaki an experience. Like, how did you think about bringing those together in terms of the film?
Well, I have to admit, it was. I remember when we started, Donna hadn't spent time with the manuscript for quite a while, so I think even she was a little bit confused about the story and the time shifting and who are the characters and when were they appearing, not only in the film but in what time. So there was a bit of a challenge there trying to get all that straight, and I think once we figured that out, yeah, I think from there it was really just making sure that as a non-native person, I think one of our early goals was to make sure that we had native people working on the film. And so for me, like I said earlier, my role was really to sort of step back and facilitate and help make everything happen. I'm not really sure if I'm answering your question completely.
No. You are. I mean, I think it is. To me, what makes this is in such a short amount of time. There's like so much information and so much narrative in it. It's really, in a way, it's dense, but it's also like, yeah, you could imagine young people, like school-age children watching this, right? And relating to it. And I guess that's sort of, I'm just fascinated by that as a way of telling the story and bringing it together. Like it's just done in such a kind of complex and yet easy to follow way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's credit to Donna's writing on it and her organization and telling of the story in written form. I know for me, like I said, as a non-native person working on this story, I've talked about this before at other panels, but you know, my family history is English on my father's side and French Canadian on my mother's side, going back for generations on either side. And you know, to talk to what Donna was talking about, being disappeared and not having those stories told, for me, the experience of working on this film really brought more context and understanding to my own family history, having grown up here in New England, what we now call New England. So I think that these stories, for those non-native people who are sort of open and receptive to hearing these stories and understanding how they relate to these stories as well, I think there's a benefit to non-native people to hearing these stories in a way that isn't just about learning history and getting facts. It really is about developing a deeper understanding of yourself and how we are all connected in our history, in our shared histories that we have together.
Yeah.
So
no,
yeah,
that's great.
that's I think that's what was the biggest part of this experience that I took from producing the film. Yeah.
Margot, you want to say anything else about, you know, just that weaving part of it?
Yeah, and what I want to say goes back to an earlier play that Donna wrote. I mean, one of the things is that I've been working with Donna, getting her plays out since the first play, which was called Gluscabe and the Venetian Basket, and that was a huge play.
Yeah.
That was a huge play, and we did it a number of times in different venues, pieces of it, the whole thing. She brought Yvette Nolan, who's an Indigenous playwright from Canada, to come down and work with her, and there was this kind of a struggle with Yvette Nolan because she wanted all kinds of, you know, edits, and you know, she was used to, like, you know, bossing people around and getting them to workshop their plays and change things.
Yvette, if you're listening out there, you know,
All right.
we love you. We love you.
Sorry, but what, you know, what this conversation here is making me understand that whole process in a different way, because there was no part of Gluscabe and the Venetian Basket that could be cut. It was 3 plays, but so there was this kind of very humorous story of hunting in the winter, and that's a beautiful story in itself, a really hilarious story. Then there's a whole story of an elder who is dying and wanting to hand on her knowledge of basket making in a context like the one we are living in now, where the emerald ash borer threatens the very materials out of which Penobscot and other Wapanaki baskets are mostly made. And there was a whole part of the play that was a dramatization of a number of traditional stories, and, you know, stories about the way the world is now and the animals and how they became the sizes that they are now. So, but there's nothing that you can drop from that, right? And so I understand that process in a whole different way. And the same with Mary and Molly. Those stories have not yet been told in a way that reaches out to audiences, even the way this salon is reaching out to people out in Zoom land.
Yeah. You know, I think there's so many hints too of like the other complexities of racialized histories within. I mean, you can think of Malaga Island, or, you know, like all of these legacies that are kind of like just underneath the surface, and then sort of the different relations between groups, right, that occur in spaces, or don't, right? I mean, there is a fairly complex narrative of Black history in Maine that is weaving through this that most people don't know either, right? So I mean, it's not, you know, to the extent that it is probably more well known, but not much better than some of the Wabanaki stories or histories, is just a legacy of, like, you know, whose story gets told in any particular. Hey, we're in Native American month now, so we're not going to talk about the Black history. No, I'm joking. But I mean, the idea that, like, we have this idea of segmented histories kind of going in these directions, like, and some get highlighted or not. I mean, that's kind of the point of what makes this so rich. So before we go back to Donna, just, you know, Bunny, one more time, of like, You know, what I love about your works is that it, especially with the Women of the Dawn, that kind of how the stories get interwoven or connected across generations, and Donna's work feels like is really connected to that of like, and if you read, you know, some really great Native authors like Louise Erdrich, also, especially when it comes to women and women connecting across story and kin, like if you could just say more about that as like part of the narrative frame of your works, and how that connects to this project as well.
I would start, I think, by saying that I didn't seek out to write about Maine Indian women or Wabanaki in general, but in the 1980s, I started through a series of unplanned circumstances working with Micmacs up in Aroostook County on their federal recognition effort. And a key part of my job in that effort was to do the oral histories of the elders. So I interviewed them and began to see these patterns in their lives. And the work was done for the community. It's never been published. It was done for them, and they were invited to share it with one another if they wanted to do that. But it was a very early lesson, which came quite naturally, about the importance of collaboration, about the importance of whose voice is going out there. And this is something I really want to say about Donna, is her sense of inclusivity, her sense of collaboration, her ability to recognize allies both within and not within the Native community, and to tap into people's expertise, to cultivate their capacities. She does that in order to get things done. And then in addition to that, which this video is a really good example of, there's an inclusivity in terms of the shared perils and difficulties and histories of marginalized minorities. And I see that in this work, and I see that in the ways that you reach out. We see that in your dedication. One of your dedications in this film is to Rachel Talbot and her father. That kind of shared, let's get things done, I think is a hallmark of your work.
So lastly, before we open up the questions, Donna, she's always very generous at offering me tips of things that I might have gotten wrong or correcting me. But my question or for corrections is, yeah, just reflecting on, you know, what this work means to you now, or how you want people to take it in terms of like what its impact might be. You know, just, yeah. What would you what would be your final like takeaway for people in this work?
No, I just like people to sort of see this film and maybe notice and learn some of the things that are in it. For instance, growing up, and I just mentioned this in here in the film just briefly, about there being a bridge just being built. It's in 52, I think it was. 51. Okay, you're correcting me.
Maybe.
So in 51, we finally got a bridge, but before that, the state required that all the kids go to school, and they required that they go to school in Old Town. So, and if they didn't, they would get the truant officer banging at their door on the island. So these kids had to go to school, and particularly, it was particularly dangerous in the spring when they were crossing the river, the ice. And they would have like sawdust to keep the ice cold and make it last longer. But it was those kind of things that I'm hoping that we bring out in in conversation about how we grew up and what people thought and what people didn't know about us. And you know, I just kind of make to make our lives real for people. Yeah.
Do you want to say who the truant officer was?
Well, it was a number of truant officers. Yeah, my grandfather.
Yeah.
On the island, though, this was,
Yeah.
They worked in.
Old Town.
yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, Donna was a police chief, so that's also
Had to say
part of it.
that.
Anyway, that's a part of our legacy. Questions? I don't know if there's any online or here in the audience. Happy to take. We don't have a ton of time left, but just yeah.
I was interested in how this has been received in the community on the island and especially among young people, the film or the play or both.
Well, in the places that we've shown the film, we haven't shown it on the island as yet. We've shown it at various campuses and libraries, and the response to it has been positive. People want to learn more, and they ask, "When's the next film coming out?" So yeah, it's been pretty positive.
Yeah, get the band back together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're still entering the phase. I mean, it's being shown coming this, as you mentioned, this weekend. Like, I still think it's like until we figure out, or until they figure out, I'm not a part of this, but until they figure out, it also like, I think digital platforming and sort of what the best way to deliver that. I think that will help, because I know even in the run up to this event, like people were asking about access, and digital access in particular. So I think as we get through these next phases, I think that will be a really important part of it. Other questions? Yeah.
Question in the chat. Arsak Besson says, Auntie, what is the highlight or greatest takeaway that you want folks to have from the film, or what is your favorite part of this process?
I didn't quite hear the entire question. It was from Rebecca.
Yes, and I can repeat it. What is the highlight or greatest takeaway that you want folks to have from the film, or what is your favorite part of the filmmaking process?
Rebecca, you're always stumping me. The favorite part of of the filmmaking process is actually figuring out the story itself, to figure out what message do I want to tell with this story, because you can go down rabbit holes, and believe me, I go down many. So just figuring out the story and the audience. I get questions a lot about why my sister, before she passed, really wanted me to address my educational things that I do to tribal communities. I haven't done that so far. I haven't done that so far because I'm looking at allies. And I would like to create more allies so that we're stronger in how we are within the state of Maine itself, that we possibly can actually have the state recognize our sovereignty. And to do that, we need allies. And that's where I've focused a lot of my time. Not that I really don't want to do it with my community. I do. I really do. But sometimes, especially in these times, you need allies. It's important.
Yeah, I just want to shout out Rebecca. In addition to being Donna's niece, Dr. Rebecca Suckabeeson is also faculty here in the College of Education, and Penobscot thinker, so inspirational. Your family is very powerful women in it, and I guess that's not that that surprising. So yeah, Rebecca, Molly and Brian. These are all people from this family. So, other questions?
I do have another in the chat from Connie McVeigh, and she asks, do you have any plans to show this on Indian Island or to try to get it shown in any of our local public schools? What are your hesitations or concerns regarding this?
I don't have any plans for public schools. That's just a huge commitment. A lot of, really. And I think this film is more focused or better for high schoolers, at least high school and up, because of the mature material in it. And as for the island, I will at some point. I will do that. Maybe I'll work with Jennifer Neptune and do it for the museum.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, I think, God, I hate to even bring this up, but the denseness of this narrative almost requires a kind of annotation and a series of educational material. I mean, there's, I don't. If anyone wants to help me apply for some grants around that, no, I'm almost half joking, but then when I speak it, sometimes these things happen. But I'll just put it out there that there are other examples of that in terms of the legacy. Of course, Donna's, primary driver to the requirements, still unfilled requirements of teaching about Maine Indian history and culture across the K through 12 curriculum in the state of Maine. But it does feel like there's a place for this in that space, but it would require, I think, a really kind of thoughtful annotation around the work. And I agree with you in terms of the level because of the issues around sexual assault and all that sort of thing. So I think it's really I think it's a really compelling project, but also requires that level of work.
I think there was a line, but not a question. So I just wanted to make sure that it was.
Yeah.
There are a couple thank you comments. Yes, Diane Whitmore says, just thank you for making this salon about this very important topic available on Zoom. Thank you, Diane. And Molly and Brian says, thank you to have you on your board at the Wabanaki Alliance, and happy to have you as a great aunt. Awesome panel all.
Would you repeat that a little louder?
I think the emphasis was on great aunt.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Molly. And
I think we're about at time anyway, right? So, geez, this went really quickly. I mean, I think just even the five of us, we could probably discuss this for quite a while. We didn't even really get into the really fine nuanced histories around race in Bangor in the 19th. I mean, there is so much complexity to that alone.
let me just say, tomorrow at 5:30.
Oh, please, yes.
I will be speaking at the Talbot lecture. I'll be the guest speaker at Talbot lecture, and we'll get into this more deeply if you're interested. Be at the Buchanan House.
Yeah, it's right here on campus at 5:30 at the Buchanan Alumni House. So yeah, again, Donna is the featured speaker this year, and don't miss it. Please come. Thank you, guys.